this is one of my hopes with technology in a sense, because technology opens up our information to information like instruction, the ways to read, like a playbook on how to develop reading. Um, Technology, like you can research it and then you can pull it up and then you can start practicing it. So that's like one of the hopes with technology because the system did fail us, and it is designed in that way. The education system, they didn't you you hear about it within from the industrial age, so now they made it for workers, for industrial workers. They designed it to be in a way where you're already acting like the 9 to 5 already as a
Mm-hmm.
kid in school. I forget, John, one of the Kennedys, they threw in a whole bunch of money into the education system to build workers, not
Mm-hmm.
really to build thinkers and entrepreneurs. Just need somebody that was already like it's programming since you're young
Mm-hmm.
to be a factory worker,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still like that now
Mm-hmm.
today. Like for example, when you were talking about finding the kids' interest and bringing their education around that interest. Um, I was listening to one podcast before where they were talking about the difference between like a homeschooling
Mm-hmm.
and like the public schooling.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the homeschooling things that they did was his kid was into masonry, and he loves
Mm.
like welding metal. He loves seeing all the metal stuff. So what he did, he has the resources and stuff, uh, which we don't all have, but it's just
Mm-hmm.
interesting to hear.
Mm-hmm.
What he did was he took his kid to a mason and it started like showing him all the things about mason. So they learned about the history
Mm-hmm.
about masonry. They learned about the practical applications. They learned about the math behind it, the science. They basically like took all the categories that you learn in school, but surrounded it around one subject, around
Mm-hmm.
masonry. And that's something that like I don't think schools do well in either too much because it's about the memory. It's about learning about stuff that maybe you don't even want to learn about or not even going to apply in the future. So it's like you're more in the school system just to practice and follow certain orders rather than, and development is true, but it's development up to how far they
Mm.
really want you to develop. It's like they don't really want you to develop too far or else you're going to be insubordinate to their own uh, objectives like work
Mm-hmm.
in the factory.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you do have a whole society of entrepreneurs, you have a free society. And does
Mm.
our system really want us to be free?
I like what you're saying because there's an
Mm-hmm.
intention of career preparation
Mm-hmm.
there, correct? Like they're trying to promote somebody to be a professional that and based on what they love. And when you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. I can tell you that.
Right.
But there's a difference. What if let's say you create a system and it's just to look good on numbers, correct? And I'll give you a good example. As a in industrial psychology, you
Yeah.
start reading these metrics.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we have diversity, but it's just on stats.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you really embrace diversity? Is it should be a stat or should be people feeling free to be themselves? So there's a difference. What you're distinguishing here, I love what you're comparing because this homeschool intention was to prepare somebody to be to find a career, and second, to be competent. How? Through exposure, through experience, to the right programming. But in a broad system, it's generalized. It's not customized. So I think that's the biggest challenge. Like, can a school really customize everyone's career? It's, I would say, impossible. Because think about this: one teacher for 30 students. From there, the teacher alone is outnumbered. So with technology, what could we do to bridge the gap and start really making customized systems? It's like having a personal clinical psychologist. Imagine if that clinical psychologist is doing the same theory with 10 people and is generalizing, but you can't do that because everyone has their different traumas, their different background, their different emotional stages. So you have to customize it so it can work and be patient to work with them for a period of time. Some will develop quick, some will develop long term. You know, It- but what you're saying is very interesting because ideally, I think that's where we want to get, where not only we teach people how to read proficiently, but where we can read what the career path should be for someone.
And that's where the community comes in. And that's where the community comes in. So if you had someone that's in masonry, bring them into the school or have an opportunity for after school or a program that you can customize and you can have it for after school like you have in high schools. I know we have cosmetology in our high school. You have some people have auto mechanics, some people have culinary. Bring those things into the schools. And if you can't realistically, because of financial constraints, bring those programs into the school, then you make the connections with your outside industries. So you have someone that's in plumbing, you have someone that's in all these different electricians, and then you have some students and you go over a curriculum with them, and then now you're in the hands of real working, with people with a business. You could talk about the business, how you established your business, the art of plumbing, the art of, working with electronics. Now you're building not only skilled workers, but they still have a comfort of reading. You're still building reading skills, but it's specific to their interests. I think we have to do a better job with dismantling um, the cognitive redlining, the legacy of cognitive redlining that occurs in this country, because that's holding us back as well. Um, those are some of the things I used to think that we needed to um, move, just retweak, tweak our reading program, the infrastructure around reading. I think we just need to blow it up. Um, I don't think that it was so much of a change. We've always had a reading problem. There's always been a reading problem, right? COVID did not unveil this great big reading problem. COVID unveiled the access and accessibility, right? That woke us up. But we've always had a problem in this country with reading, going back to anti-literacy laws. So I just want to preface what I'm about to say with the fact that our brains were not wired to read. We have to teach it to read, right? It does this great thing, right? It rewires itself, right, to form pathways for reading to develop. A lot of people don't understand that. It's very different than language. Language, you can put a child in a room full of people who are speaking and they will speak. You don't have to teach them how to talk, right? That is not going to happen for reading. You cannot sit someone in a room full of people who are reading, whether they're reading out loud or silently. It's not going to happen. You have to teach it to read, right? That starts very early. What we think is reading starts in kindergarten, and then we build these habits in kindergarten. And if we think that, we're 5 years already behind, right? Reading starts really at the moment of conception. How? Well, all of the stuff that mom eats, all of the environmental pressures and stress impacts the developing brain. Reading is all about the brain. The brain is the main character, right? And so if we understand that, then we have a point of reference. And so how do we build stamina, right? Because in order to learn to read and read well, you have to build stamina. I'm like, this is a race, right? Not for the quick athlete, but it's endurance. And it took us years, decades to get here. My book has only been out since August. It's not going to take months for us to get out. And so people have to come to the point where I came to and say, okay, I reflected, now I see, and now I'm going to do better. When you know better, you do better.